Hello, everybody. Father Scott Vanderveer here against the bracing cold of a winter day. There is nothing quite like coming in contact with nature. What a funny word that is. You know how we use nature to mean many things. Like we use it to mean the state of how things are. Like human nature, the nature of things. That's the nature of the species, we might say. But it's also that general catch-all word that means creation. Nature is the world we live in. So often it's funny for us to see animals living outdoors. We say, look at them living out there, unprotected outdoors, but they're in home. They're in the home of all created things. Nature, the outdoors, is our true dwelling. The dwellings we live in, the walls we build and the roofs we put over ourselves are meant for our protection. And we can start to think that that's where real life happens. But it's a mediated form of real life. It's a protected, created, human-engineered way of living in the world. Outdoors is where the world is. Space is outdoors. Everything's outdoors. Only our human-created worlds are indoors. I'll never forget talking with a friend who grew up on the West Coast. And we were talking about how the East Coast of the United States and the West Coast are different in many ways. And one of the things my friend said, and I think I agree, is that the East Coast is where architecture is at its very best in our country. When you think of cities like Boston and Philadelphia, St. Augustine, Florida, Jamestown, Virginia, Jamestown, Rhode Island, all of these beautiful historic places where our colonial ancestors worked together with the indigenous landscape to make something that human beings could point to as architectural greatness. My friend who grew up out west said, we don't have buildings like that. Maybe in a few cities like San Francisco and Seattle, but most of our beauty is outdoors. It's an interesting thought, isn't it? Here we have such beautiful, beautiful land in the East, but we put a lot of our attention into our cities and into the indoors. There is an epidemic of anxiety and depression in our society right now. And one thing that doctors all agree on is a great remedy for those things is to be outdoors and to come in closer contact with nature. Being in nature recalibrates us in a lot of different ways. It humbles us because we're so small against the largeness of nature. Things indoors are created and engineered to be human scale so that we can use them however we wish. The handle is always right about where our arm ends and our hand is hanging. But in nature, everything is so much bigger than we are. And remembering that we're part of something so big, so much bigger than we could have even conceive, that's really healthy for a human mind. It's also beautiful to realize how much harmony there is in nature without it needing to be regulated or controlled. Don't you think that's interesting? That it all fits and makes sense, even though there's no manager other than God in charge of it. The same manager in charge of indoors is in charge of outdoors. But indoors, we meddle with it all the time. Outdoors, it's all in such harmony. A friend of mine who teaches Sunday school at his Catholic parish outside of Boston said, haven't you ever noticed that none of the colors in nature clash? Isn't it crazy? He says that in our closets, we have all sorts of created things that clash, plaids and stripes. There's so many different kinds of furniture and rugs and decor that could make your house kind of a nightmare of clashing colors and patterns. Not in nature. It all fits. that tree is exactly where it is supposed to be. The trees in the distance, the frozen lake, it's all perfect. It's also perfect. One of the things that we're called to is to remember that nature is not something that exists for our benefit. It's part of our life. It's part of us. We are from the earth. We're enfleshed spirits. We're made out of dust. You know how we say that at funerals? Remember that you are dust and to dust you shall return. And so our relationship with nature is very spiritual. It's not a pragmatic utilitarian kind of relationship. We are engaging with nature, as Martin Buber would have said, the great scholar, as an I thou, not an I it. This out here is not an it, it's a thou. It's a living force. It belongs to God like we do. So we can't have a relationship where we say, what do I want to turn that tree into? What do I want to turn this water into? How do I want to use this to serve me? Sure, there are times that our having stewardship of this allows us to take it and use it, for sure. But that's not our primary relationship with creation. It's not a bunch of resources to be used. It's a being. It's a thou, not an it. Here's where things start to get amazing. When you realize that we're looking at all of nature, and I'm in a part of the diocese now that's quite rural, and much of us who are watching this are living in the Glens Falls area where there's so much rural, beautiful, mountainous land around us. But do you know, although there are so many creatures in that beautiful mountainous land, although there are so many kinds of flora and fauna that are in this scene, do you know, unbelievably, 9 out of every 10 living things on the earth lives in the ocean? We're only seeing 1/10 of creation here. 9 out of 10. 9 out of 10 living things is an aquatic thing. How amazing is that? So, as we ponder our relationship with this, maybe it's time for us to make some commitments to how we want to engage differently with nature, with creation, knowing that it is us. And it is like part of our family. It is a thou. It is another thing that God created. And it is not just a thing, it's the space that makes room for everything we experience. There's a Haitian proverb that says, life is the best gift. Everything else is just extra. Well, I think we could say, whatever we own, whatever possessions we have, whatever treasures we might have, those are the extra things. But nature, creation, is the best gift from God. Let us enter this Jubilee year ahead with a renewed awareness of the amazing gift of nature to us all. May God bless you and this creation we call our mother and our home.